Hi everybody, I'm Greg Hird-Rutter and I'm the lead VFX artist on the Dead Space remake. What I'm going to show you today is some of the atmospheric and environmental VFX that have been created by our team. These are VFX such as fog, smoke, and pyrotechnics that help populate the Ishimura and help tell the Dead Space narrative. Now before I show you what we're doing, let's take a look at the original Dead Space and what they did for their environmental VFX. They did an amazing job in setting a very desaturated color palette, with everything very muted and everything feels very natural. Nothing feels fantastical or takes you out of that horror mood. For the remake, we wanted to stay true to this, but look for opportunities to push things further using modern day techniques. The original was quite limited in terms of complexity of VFX, while we have a lot more room to move. The first thing I'd like to show you is how some of our VFX can react to changing environmental conditions. So here we have a debug scene, and as you can see, it's pretty much empty with some sparks and drips. These are pretty typical VFX that we'll see in a number of locations in the Ishimura to show damaged areas. What I'd like to show you is how these effects can react to changing environmental conditions, and in this case, what happens when gravity is disabled. I'm going to disable the gravity here, and right now we can see that these VFX are behaving differently, and they're no longer falling to the floor. Now there's a lot more happening than just the gravity. I can make a number of artistic choices as to how the VFX behave. For example, with the drips, I wanted to extend their lifetime so they spread out across the room rather than disappear quickly. For the sparks, I reduced their turbulent motion because when they had a lot of turbulence, it felt like they were still in normal conditions. There's a number of things that we can modify so that when the player interacts with these effects, they'll feel believable and well integrated. These little details can really add up to help tell the story and make the Ishimura feel like it's alive. Next, I'd like to show you a little bit about our pyrotechnics pipeline. I'm looking at one of our explosion effects. This is something we'd see when a small prop is getting destroyed. Here we have a bunch of different elements, like a fireball, smoke, sparks, and debris. I'll hide a few of these so we can concentrate just on the fire and smoke. I'll set this to loop so we can see it continually playing. Something that is important to Dead Space is that we have a lot of dark environments that have changing lighting conditions. We were finding that elements such as fire and explosions would look way too bright when the environment was dark, and then would be barely visible when the environment was brighter. So what we had to do was to be sure that our source pyrotextures were rendered in full HDR quality to ensure that the final image would contain the full range of brightness values. I'll slow this down a bit so we can see things a bit more clearly. If I zoom in, the exposure will adjust so it doesn't appear too blown out, and when I back off, it will readjust. If I change this to a darker environment, you'll see that we don't get a crazy amount of overbrightness, and we're still able to see a lot of detail in the texture. And finally, I'll go to pitch black. It still holds up and behaves naturally. So this all means that we can play a lot with the lighting in our environments, and the VFX will still integrate into the experience well and be legible by the player. The final thing I wanted to show is our interactive atmospherics. So here I am in another test map. I have a few debug lights floating around so we can see what's happening here. I'll just back up and start one of our Steam effects. So what do we have here? It's a volume-based 3D simulation. It exists inside a container, and density and velocity values are pushed around to create what we see here. Something that's cool about this simulation is that it lives in the physics world, so if the player walks through it, it will interact. Also, if I pick up an object, like this battery, it will also behave quite naturally. This will work if I spawn an enemy. I disabled its AI, so it won't attack me. As you can see, the steam will collide and interact with him too. This effect also works quite well with our lighting and renders with the rest of the fog we have throughout our game. This can be used in a number of cases. We can create a steam or smoke effect like this, or we can cover the floor with a thin layer of interactive fog. In some cases, we can even fill an entire room with a cool simulation like this to give us some interesting and terrifying gameplay situations. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the VFX we're working on.